Thank you, Cian Corley. Minister, Sarah and Dominic live in Kilkenny with their 2 kids, and they bought their home in 2007. The shop Sarah worked in Kilkenny closed down, and they were unable to service their full mortgage, but they are getting back on their feet. 2 years ago, your government sold Sarah and Dominic's mortgage to a US investment firm, and that firm is now evicting Sarah, Dominic and their 2 children. Last week, journalist Niall Brady reported that your government sold Sarah's mortgage and the mortgage of thousands of others to the US investment firm at a 60% discount, 58%. That would have brought Sarah's €350,000 mortgage down to about €140,000, which is about the value of the property and a mortgage that Sarah and Dominic can afford. The firm, Minister, is called Oaktree Capital, and Sarah and Dominic know them as Mars Capital, the company that Oaktree set up to buy thousands of mortgages in Ireland. Now, at the time of the sale, your government refused to allow Sarah and Dominic and any of the Irish mortgage holders to bid on their own mortgages. Instead, you sold them to Mars Capital with a discount of 58%. Now, Mars Capital structured the deal in such a way that the real discount they got was closer to 70%. That would have brought Sarah's mortgage down from €350,000 to about €100,000. She can't service the €350,000, so she's being she's being evicted, which is bad news for her, Dominic, and the kids, but very good news for Oaktree Capital, because their accounts show that for their €80 million investment, they believe they're going to get a return of €400 million. But actually, it gets worse, Minister, because an examination of Mars Capital accounts is a masterclass in tax avoidance. The accounts show, Minister, that the interest income minus the interest costs for the year come to €4,559,904. Astoundingly, the figure for administrative expenses against that is €4,558,904, leaving exactly €1,000 in taxable profit. The company, Minister, has 3 shares issued to 3 different charitable trusts. The Finances, Minister, are also structured to ensure that all interest payments, all mortgage payments from Sarah, from Dominic and from everybody else, and all capital gains can be offset against costs, ensuring that there are no taxes owed. So, Minister, here are my questions. Why did your government sell an asset that required just €80 million to buy, that one of the leading hedge funds in the world believes is actually worth about €400 million? What do you and your government say to Sarah, to Dominic and their children, and to the many others being evicted by these foreign firms or indeed struggling to pay their taxes? Do you accept, Minister, that the state will receive almost no benefit in taxes, either on profits or on capital gains from these deals?
Now, Deputy Donnelly,
and finally,
please.
Minister, I'm asking, will your government launch an investigation into the tax affairs of all of these funds that purchased these mortgages in Ireland to ensure not just tax compliance, because tax avoidance is of course legal, but to ensure that the real profits and real capital gains that these funds make are declared properly in Ireland and taxed accordingly? Thank you.
Minister.
Well, first of all, I think in respect of the tax affairs of any company, they are open to pursuit by the Revenue Commissioners, and if the Deputy has information that he needs to bring to the attention of the Revenue Commissioners, I would recommend him would do so. There's no doubt that the Revenue Commissioners have enhanced powers. Every year we enhance their powers, and I think they will pursue any company that is abusing its position. I think the wider issue of people with mortgage difficulties is one that has been very much on the government agenda, and there's a lot of work has been put in, both legislative and otherwise, to seek to protect people and give them the option of remaining in their homes, even though they're in very difficult financial situation. And this week, the Minister for Justice and the Minister for Social Protection have brought further proposals to government to enhance and integrate that service, so that the service of MABs, of the Insolvency Service of Ireland, of the legal advice scheme that was set up in the past, of the various mortgage codes of practice, that those would be delivered in a more effective way to clients who need that support. I think the sad situation is that many people who could access these supports for either reasons of fear or not knowing what's available haven't come forward to do that. In order to deal with that, there's been an effort by government to ensure that, for example, at repossession cases, that the government would be, the Insolvency Service and MABs would be represented so that they could intervene to support people who are at risk and haven't had access to the support services that are available. Further, I know one of the issues that we've sought to develop has been the mortgage to rent as an alternative for people who might be at risk. I think that, as many would recognise, hasn't been the success that it ought to have been, and that again is being looked at afresh by Minister Coveney in the context of an action plan for housing. So I think the government is acutely conscious of the needs of vulnerable people who are in this situation, and we're seeking to develop more effective services, both legal and otherwise. As you know, under the insolvency course, financial institutions can no longer block an agreement that has been developed by a practitioner in this sphere. So the courts can be used to overturn resistance by a lender to giving approval to a reasonable deal.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Donnelly.
Thank you, Minister. But with respect, my question was not about the crash mats your government is putting in place for people it has pushed off the wall. My question is about tax. Tax avoidance is not an issue for the Revenue Commissioners because it is legal. And it would appear that your government is guilty of facilitating wholesale tax avoidance by international investment firms making windfall profits in Ireland off the backs of ordinary, decent people trying to pay their mortgages, like Sarah and Dominic. So, my questions, Minister, are this. We don't know, the additional information. We don't know where Mars Capital is sending this money. They're called notes. We don't know where they're going. But what we do know is that Oaktree Capital, if you look at the SEC filings, holds multiple investment firms in the Cayman Islands. Thank you, Ken Corliss. So let me ask the following questions. Minister, was the Department of Finance, directly or indirectly, shown the tax avoidance structures that these firms, like Mars Capital, were going to use? Why was it not made part of any sale, that all profits and capital gains accruing to these
Deputy,
firms
you're now out
would be
of time.
properly...
Please, the clock applies to you in the same way as everybody else. The time has elapsed, so will you resume your seat? No, I'm not speaking for the sake of speaking. It's my job to enforce the standing orders. The time has elapsed. Will you resume your seat?
Just reiterate the question, Minister. Will you consider an investigation and report back to the House on the extent of the tax avoidance that we're seeing here?
Minister.
The situation is that the Finance Acts provide for anti-avoidance measures, and the Revenue Commissioners execute those, and they have the powers to deal with those effectively, and those powers have been enhanced every year in every finance bill over the years. If there's additional reform in the Finance Acts necessary, it is open to the Deputy to bring forward such amendments. But in respect of the existing revenue arrangements, they will enforce those, and if the Deputy has details of some new anti-avoidance mechanism or avoidance mechanism that should be scrutinised by the Revenue Commissioners, they will be more than pleased to consider those and perhaps bring forward to the House in the next finance bill measures that would help to protect against those. But I don't have access to the information that the Deputy has about the specific avoidance structures which he describes, but the Revenue Commissioners are available there to enforce that. There are general anti-avoidance provisions, as you know, in the the Finance Acts, and they will be overseen and properly executed by the Revenue.
Thank you very much, Minister. That